The quieter you become, the more you can hear. A spiritual exploration of inner silence, awareness, and the voice within in the modern world. Silence is often misunderstood. It is seen as emptiness, as inactivity, as something unproductive or even uncomfortable. Noise, on the other hand, is equated with live conversation, media, movement, thought, and constant stimulation are considered signs of engagement and progress. Yet, from a spiritual perspective, this constant noise, external and internal, is not a sign of clarity, but of distraction. The deeper truths of existence rarely shout, they whisper. And it is only when you become quiet, truly quiet, that you begin to hear them. The statement, the quieter you become, the more you can hear, speaks not just to the absence of sound, but to the cultivation of inner stillness. It refers to a shift from the chaos of mental chatter to the calm of awareness. It suggests that beneath the surface level noise of thoughts, fears, and desires, there exists a deeper dimension of understanding, one that becomes accessible only when the mind stops trying to control, interpret, and judge everything it encounters. Spiritual quietness is not about muting the world, it is about softening the ego. The human mind is rarely still. It moves continuously, planning the future, replaying the past, analyzing situations, anticipating outcomes, forming opinions, constructing identities. This mental movement creates a layer of interpretation that filters every experience. We do not simply see what is, we see what we think about what is. This constant interpretation becomes a kind of inner noise. It tells us who we should be, what we should want, what we should fear, and how we should respond. It creates narratives about success, failure, love, loss, safety, and threat. Over time, these narratives become so familiar that we mistake them for truth. We begin to believe that the voice in our head, the one that worries, criticizes, compares, and strategizes, is our deepest self. But spiritually, this voice is only one layer of consciousness. Beneath it lies a quieter awareness, one that does not argue or analyze, but simply observes. This awareness does not seek control, it seeks understanding. It does not rush to conclusions. It remains present with experience as it unfolds. And yet this awareness is easily drowned out by the noise of thought. When your mind is constantly active, it becomes difficult to distinguish intuition from impulse, wisdom from habit, truth from fear. You may feel guided by your thoughts, but often those thoughts are conditioned by past experiences, cultural expectations, or unresolved emotions. Spiritual quietness creates space. In that space, you begin to notice the difference between the reactive mind and the responsive heart. You begin to see your thoughts not as commands, but as events, temporary, changing, and not necessarily authoritative. This realization can be transformative, because when you stop believing every thought you think, you become available to deeper forms of knowing. Silence becomes a doorway. Through practices such as meditation, prayer, contemplation, mindful breathing, or simply intentional stillness, you begin to loosen your attachment to the mental narratives that dominate your attention. You allow thoughts to arise and pass without chasing them. You sit with discomfort instead of immediately seeking distraction. You listen not just to sounds but to sensations, emotions, and subtle insights. At first, this quiet may feel unsettling. Without the familiar hum of constant thinking, you may encounter restlessness, boredom, or even anxiety. The mind, accustomed to activity, resists stillness. It may attempt to fill the silence with plans, worries, or memories. But if you persist gently without forcing or judging, you begin to notice something remarkable. There is a presence beneath the noise. This presence is not constructed through effort. It is revealed through attention. It is the awareness that has always been there, watching your thoughts, sensing your emotions, experiencing your life. In spiritual traditions, this presence is often described as the true self, the soul, or the witness consciousness. When you become quiet, you begin to hear this presence, not in words, but in clarity. You may feel a subtle sense of alignment when making decisions. You may notice an intuitive pull towards certain paths or away from certain patterns. You may recognize emotional responses that once seemed automatic as opportunities for conscious choice. In silence, you become more sensitive to yourself, to others, to the unfolding of life. You hear not only your own inner guidance, but also the unspoken needs and emotions of those around you. You notice the tone behind someone's words, the tension behind their silence, the kindness behind their actions. Compassion becomes more accessible because you are no longer consumed by your own mental noise. The quieter you become, the more attuned you are to connection. This attunement extends beyond human relationships. Many people find that in spiritual quietness, they feel a deeper connection to nature, to creativity, or to a sense of meaning that transcends everyday concerns. The rustling of leaves, the rhythm of breath, the warmth of sunlight, these experiences, often overlooked in the rush of daily life, take on new significance. You begin to experience life directly, rather than through the filter of constant interpretation. This direct experience can be deeply healing. Much of human suffering arises not from events themselves, but from the stories we attach to them. We replay conversations, imagine future conflicts, compare ourselves to others, or dwell on perceived failures. These mental habits amplify pain and prolong distress. But in quiet awareness, you learn to meet experience as it is. You feel sadness without immediately judging it as weakness. You encounter fear without assuming it must dictate your actions. You notice joy without clinging to it or fearing its loss. This non-reactive presence allows emotions to move through you rather than become trapped within you. Over time, this movement fosters resilience. You become less defined by what happens to you and more grounded in how you respond. And response arises from listening. In silence, you hear the difference between urgency and importance. You recognize when your actions are driven by insecurity rather than purpose. You sense when it is time to speak and when it is time to remain still. Silence refines discernment. It teaches you that not every thought requires action, not every emotion requires expression, and not every opportunity requires acceptance. In a world that often encourages constant doing, silence reminds you of the power of being. This beingness is not passive. It is deeply engaged, aware, receptive, and intentional. It allows you to participate in life without becoming overwhelmed by it. You act not from compulsion but from clarity. As your capacity for quiet grows, so does your trust in the unfolding of life. You become less dependent on external validation and more rooted in internal alignment. Decisions feel less like calculations and more like invitations. You begin to recognize that guidance often arises not through forceful analysis, but through gentle insight. The quieter you become, the more you hear not only guidance, but gratitude. You notice the subtle blessings of ordinary moments. You appreciate the simplicity of presence. You find contentment not in constant achievement, but in authentic engagement with what is. In this way, silence becomes nourishment. It restores your attention, recalibrates your perspective, and reconnects you with the deeper dimensions of your being. It does not remove challenges, but it equips you to meet them with steadiness. And in that steadiness, wisdom emerges. The spiritual journey is not always about acquiring new knowledge. Often it is about remembering what has been obscured by noise. Silence helps you remember your values, your intentions, your connection to something greater than yourself. It invites you to listen beyond words, to listen beyond fear, to listen beyond habit. Because in the quiet, life speaks not in arguments, but in understanding, not in commands, but in invitations. And as you become quieter, you become more capable of hearing what truly matters. Not the loudest voice, but the truest one.